The unraveling of the Prout secret. The morning in the Prout apartment, nestled in a quiet, brick building in the suburbs of Atlanta, Georgia, began with a familiar rhythm. Lydia was the first to stir, slipping from beneath the covers, careful not to wake her husband, Ethan. Ethan, a large man who worked the second shift as a security supervisor at the Perimeter Mall, could afford to sleep late. Lydia quietly locked herself in the bathroom, her eyes immediately finding her reflection. At 44, the weariness around her eyes was more pronounced, a roadmap etched by a life of perpetual tension. She retrieved a small cosmetic pouch from under the sink. Inside, a bottle of hormone pills, her secret kept for 20 years. She'd always dismissed them as women's multivitamins. When Ethan was around, had never been the type to pry into details. Swallowing the pill with a gulp of tap water, she began her meticulous morning transformation. By the time Ethan lumbered out of bed, the exhausted Lydia would be replaced by a flawlessly put-together woman, her makeup perfect, her chestnut hair styled. Even after 15 years of marriage, she couldn't allow herself to appear anything less than ideal for him. In the kitchen, the scent of sizzling bacon and strong coffee filled the air exactly how Ethan liked it. Their marriage lacked passion, but offered a crucial stability, a luxury Lydia never had growing up. "Morning, baby," Ethan's deep voice boomed as his heavy footsteps descended the stairs. 47. Broad-shouldered and carrying a significant gut, Ethan Prout was a physically imposing figure. "Morning, sweetheart," Lydia replied, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She'd been plagued by a deep, throbbing ache in her lower abdomen for weeks. At first, she attributed it to stress, but the pain was worsening. "You look a little green today, Lyd," Ethan commented, sitting down. "Still having those stomach cramps?" Lydia nodded. "I made an appointment with Dr. Banks for 4 o'clock today. Thanks for letting me take off early." She placed his plate of scrambled eggs and bacon in front of him. "Good. It's about time," he grumbled, digging in. "Don't forget to stop by the grocery store afterward. Fridge is bare." Lydia just sipped her coffee, her appetite gone. "I talked to Chantal yesterday. She asked if we could go to her birthday party next Saturday." Ethan scowled. "Chantal again. Always organizing something. Who's going to be there? Her weird artist friends?" "Just regular people, Ethan. She's my best friend." "She knows too much about you," he retorted, his tone hardening. "Sometimes I think you tell her more than you tell me." Lydia remained silent. Chantal was, in fact, the only person who knew everything about her past, about who she had been before her transition. She was the one who helped Lydia maintain the fragile 15-year-old secret. "I'm off to work," Lydia said, gathering the dishes. She worked at the Style Crown Hair Salon, a 20-minute walk from their home. "Don't forget the doctor's appointment," Ethan reminded her. "Call me after to let me know what she said." As she reached the door, Ethan called out, "Hey, baby. I love you. You know that, right?" "I know," Lydia said quietly. "I love you too." A routine appointment, a fatal revelation. The salon's constant noise, the hum of dryers, the chatter of clients usually provided a comforting distraction. But today, a knot of dread tightened in Lydia's stomach. Dr. Nefertiti Banks, her gynecologist for 3 years, was about to ask questions she couldn't evade. Lydia had always managed to keep her transgender history a secret during routine checkups, but the persistent abdominal pain required a full examination. At 3:30 p.m., she left the salon for the private practice in downtown Atlanta. In the waiting room, her hands shook as she filled out the intake form. When she reached the section for past surgeries, she paused, then left the box blank, heart pounding. Exactly at 4 p.m., she was called in. Dr. Banks, an elegant woman with short dreadlocks, greeted her with a professional smile. Lydia described the dull, radiating pain. "All right, let's have a look, Doctor," Banks said, instructing Lydia to change into a gown. When Dr. Banks began the internal exam, her movements grew hesitant, then stopped altogether. She slowly raised her eyes to Lydia. Mrs. Pruitt. Her voice suddenly cold and formal. You did not indicate on your form that you have undergone gender reassignment surgery. Lydia felt the blood drain from her face. I didn't think it was relevant to my current symptoms. It's absolutely relevant to your overall health, Doctor. Banks stated sternly. When did the surgery take place? 20 years ago. Lydia whispered. Doctor. Banks continued the examination, asking a battery of specific questions about her post-operative care and hormone regimen. The pain you're experiencing could be complications related to the surgery, she concluded. We'll need an ultrasound and lab work. Suddenly, the office door flew open without a knock. Ethan's massive figure filled the doorway. Lydia. I got off work early. The receptionist said you were still back here. Doctor. Banks, oblivious to the storm she had unleashed, continued professionally. Oh, Mr. Pruitt. We were just discussing the necessary follow-up tests for your wife. Given the post-operative features and hormone therapy, post-operative features. Ethan cut her off, his eyes darting from the doctor to his ashen-faced wife. What the hell are you talking about, Doctor? Banks looked at Lydia, realizing the gravity of her slip. He doesn't know, she asked quietly. Lydia slowly shook her head, unable to meet her husband's gaze. Doesn't know what? Ethan's voice grew louder, laced with fear and confusion. Lydia, what is going on? Perhaps we should continue this discussion when Mrs. Pruitt is ready, Doctor. Banks tried to intervene. No. Ethan roared. I want to know now. What have you been hiding? Lydia finally looked up at him. 15 years of carefully constructed safety crumbling on her. I'm not exactly who you thought I was, Ethan. What does that mean? 20 years ago, I had gender reassignment surgery, she blurted out. The words are raw, painful confession. I was born a man. The silence that followed was suffocating. Ethan froze, his face a mask of disbelief. You're a man, he finally whispered, his voice dangerously calm. I've been living with a man for 15 years. No, Ethan. I am a woman. Lydia stood up, trying to cling to a shred of dignity. I've always been a woman inside. The surgery just aligned my body. Shut up. Ethan's calmness evaporated into pure, savage rage. He slammed his fist into the drywall, leaving a deep indentation. You're a lying freak. A monster, Doctor. Banks, now terrified, hit the silent security alarm. Mr. Pruitt, please calm down. This reaction is not helpful. Stay out of this. Ethan screamed. Lydia grabbed her purse and bolted for the door. I have to go, Ethan. We'll talk when you've cooled down. Stop. He lunged for her, but Dr. Banks blocked him momentarily. Lydia didn't wait for the elevator, taking the stairs two at a time. She heard Ethan's heavy footsteps and shouts echoing behind her as she burst out of the clinic and onto the busy downtown street. She ran, her panic giving her a desperate burst of speed, darting down a less trafficked side alley, desperate to lose herself in the approaching evening crowd. Detective Willis and the dark sedan. The following morning, Detective Obadiah Willis of the Atlanta Police Department arrived at a dank, narrow alleyway. The crime scene was already cordoned off with yellow tape. An unnaturally twisted arm protruding from behind a dumpster led to the body of a woman. Female, mid-40s, blunt force trauma to the head. The medical examiner reported. Violent death. Likely with this. She pointed to a bloody piece of rebar nearby. Willis, a tall, weary man with sharp, weary eyes, squatted next to the victim. They identified her from her driver's license. Lydia Pruitt, 44. Time of death estimated between 5 and 7 last night. Dr. Rhymes added. Willis noticed a security camera mounted on the corner of the building above. Pull the footage, he ordered. Back in his car, he ran the victim's name. No priors. Married to Ethan Pruitt, 47, security supervisor. A call to Ethan's workplace confirmed he hadn't shown up for his shift. Patrol was dispatched to the Pruitt home unanswered. The first lead came from the medical center. The receptionist confirmed Lydia's appointment with Dr. Banks at 4 p.m., followed by a security call to the office around 4:30 p.m. Willis spoke to Dr. Nefertiti Banks, who looked pale and visibly shaken. She recounted the appointment, the surgical revelation, Ethan's sudden appearance, and his furious outburst. He was in a rage, she whispered, rubbing her temples. He called her a liar, said, "You're going to pay for this," right before they both ran out. The security footage confirmed Dr. Banks's story, Lydia running out, followed seconds later by a furious Ethan, both heading for the alley. A check of the Pruitt home revealed signs of hasty packing and an empty gun box on the bedroom floor. "Put out a bolo," Willis ordered, "armed and dangerous. Check every possible hideout." Willis next interviewed Chantal Dubois, Lydia's best friend. Tearful and distraught, Chantal confirmed the secret and Ethan's severe prejudice. She never dared tell him. She was terrified of his reaction. "He was always so aggressive about people like us." Chantal also mentioned a detail that snagged Willis's attention. A few weeks ago, Lydia had felt like she was being followed by a dark sedan driven by a woman. That night, the tech team tracked Ethan's route after the alley. He had taken a bus out of state to Norfolk, Virginia, confirming Chantal's lead on his estranged brother. The prime suspect was clearly Ethan Pruitt, but something was off. Why was he running to a known relative? And the detail about the dark sedan bothered him. Willis replayed the clinic security footage. As Lydia and Ethan ran out, a dark sedan, parked across the street, pulled away and followed them down the street toward the alley. "Zoom in on the driver," he commanded. The grainy image showed a silhouette, a woman with short hair. The same type of car Lydia had been afraid of. Was there a third party? The doctor's obsession. The third day, Ethan Pruitt walked into the Atlanta precinct and turned himself in. "I didn't kill her," he insisted, his face ravaged by grief and lack of sleep. "I chased her, yes, yelling things I'll regret forever. But I lost sight of her when I had to maneuver around a car in the alley. When I got in, she was gone. I just drove to my brother's to clear my head." "A car?" Willis pressed. "Can you describe the driver?" "A woman, I think. Short hair," Ethan replied, unknowingly confirming the footage. Willis looked at the autopsy report again. Time of death between 5:30 and 6:30 p.m. He then checked Dr. Banks's file. She didn't leave the clinic until 7 p.m., 2 hours after her last appointment, and the security guard mentioned her car, a dark blue Ford Fusion. Willis ran a background check on Dr. Banks and found a surprising detail. She had worked at the medical center in the Perimeter Mall, the same mall where Ethan worked security. They may have known each other. A nervous nurse, Tamara, requested a private meeting. Dr. Banks and Mr. Pruitt. They were seeing each other, she confessed. "I saw them in the parking lot. Intimate. And Dr. Banks specifically told me to stay away from the exam room yesterday." The phone records confirmed the affair. Over 50 calls between Ethan and Dr. Banks in the last 3 months. Willis confronted Ethan. Ethan admitted to a brief, 2-month affair, which he had recently ended. "It was a mistake. She didn't mean anything. I ended it because, despite our problems, I loved Lydia." Dr. Banks may not have seen it that way, Willis countered. "She may have wanted Lydia out of the picture. She knew you were conservative, prejudiced. She used your wife's secret to break you up." Just then, Detective Parker knocked. "DNA results from under the victim's fingernails are back, sir. It's a female, and the sample matches Dr. Nefertiti Banks." A search of Dr. Banks's home and car yielded bloody latex gloves and clothing. Arrested in her office, Dr. Banks calmly agreed to confess. "I met Ethan 3 years ago. I fell in love immediately. A real man," she began, her voice cold and steady. "I asked him to leave Lydia, but he refused. He said they had a special bond. I had to know what was so special about that ordinary woman." She admitted to following Lydia, recognizing the hormone pills, And realizing the power of the secret, I created the obstacle in the alley with my car, she continued. Lydia was there alone. I told her I wanted to help, that she should just leave. But she recognized me, screamed that I had ruined everything, threatened to destroy my practice. Dr. Banks' eyes finally showed a flicker of emotion, pure, cold resentment. She was only thinking of herself. I grabbed the rebar. I just hit her until she stopped moving. Aftermath. Ethan Pruitt was released. When he met Willis, he was a broken man. I didn't know she was obsessed with me, he whispered, looking defeated. I chased after Lydia, shouting those horrible words at her. That was the last thing she heard me say. Hate and disgust. She was obsessed with being with you, Willis replied. To her, Lydia was an obstacle to be removed. I loved her, Ethan admitted, tears finally falling. I was shocked by the truth, but she was my wife for 15 years. I would have come back, maybe not right away, but I would have. A week later, at Lydia Pruitt's funeral, a large crowd had gathered. Ethan stood alone until Chantal walked up and took his hand. They walked together to the casket. She was so afraid you'd find out, Chantal said quietly. All her life, she lived in fear that the truth would come out and you would hate her. I don't hate her, Ethan said, placing a single red rose on the casket. I miss her, and I wish she had confided in me sooner. Willis watched the scene from a distance. The killer was caught, the case closed. But for Lydia Pruitt, who had spent her life hiding the truth for fear of judgment, the closure came too late. And for Ethan, the realization that he could have chosen love over prejudice arrived only after his secrets had been violently exposed by the ulterior motives of a rejected lover.